Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaskaram. Myself Radhika Premanandan Nair welcomes you all to yet another session of Nalanda's Webshala. I am taking this opportunity to thank our founder director Padma Bhushan Awardee Dr. Srimati Kanak Rile and our principal Dr. Srimati Uma Rile for giving me this wonderful opportunity. The topic chosen by me to speak today is, does competitive spirit enrich dance? Before entering into the topic, I would like to tell you why I have selected this particular topic. As a student at Nalanda, when we were being taught the nuances of choreography, our teachers used to say that only with practice you will improve. So I started choreographing small solo Bharatanatyam dance pieces for school and college children for their competitions. At some point I realized working for competition and for a full-fledged program both gives you a different experience. While choreographing for competitions, we have to compromise with our themes. Then we had time limit, and in that time limit we have to show the vim, vigor and versatility of the child. But while choreographing for a full-fledged program, we can show our caliber, our creativity, and there is no restriction on the theme. Even while judging a particular competition when I used to watch certain competition, I used to feel that why should we compete in dance? Can we compare Indian classical dance forms like Bharatanatyam, Odissi, Kathakali and Manipuri with each other? Can we say classical is the best and not folk dance? They are incomparable. Every dance style has its own beauty. It has its own poise, its own lilting movement which cannot be compared with each other. Can we compare Lasya and Tandava? Bharatanatyam itself has several banis. I used to feel, how can we compare two banis? As I spoke of Lasya and Tandava, I used to feel, how can we say that I love my mother the most or my father as such? At times I used to even feel, who are we to judge such divine art form? At which point it must have changed from a means of communication to an element of competition. In search of an answer to all these questions, I decided to read mythological, historical books related to this topic. And I came across beautiful references related to dance competition. And I would like to share this with you. So let us start with our first slide. According to Oxford Dictionary, competition means a situation in which people or organization compete with each other for something that not everyone can have. Historical references gives an account of sports like Chaturanga, chariot racing, archery, and singing and dancing also has been included in it as a competitive element. Now, let us look at the literary evidences from Sanskrit play. Kalidasa, the playwright, who had a deep knowledge of Natya Shastra, in his classic play Malvikagnimitra, refers to a competition arranged by the Vidushaka, clown, of the court between the disciples of two dance masters. The disciples were Malavika and junior queen Iravati. The next example is from Shamilaka's Padattadit Takam. Competition between courtesans of two kingdoms must have been a regular feature, is evident from this monologue. The competition between Mayurasena and Kaverika. Mayurasena from Sinhala Dweepa or today's Sri Lanka was asked to dance first. From the very beginning, faults were seen in her performance by Upachandra, an expert in Lasya dance. The members of audience supported Upachandra, but Talwar Harishudra took the side of Mayurasena, and he was supported by the judge Prashnika. And the Mayurasena got the award, which made Kaverika very jealous and angry. These two references from these two different plays gives a picture of the society of that time. The existence of competition, the non-acceptance of an unbiased feedback, and an unfair judgment by the powerful ones. Now let's see the another myth from Bharatarnava. Another mythical reference is in Bharatarnava, a work on Nartana, dance manual, consisting of 4,000 shlokas, which was abridged by its author Nandikeshwara due to some emergency. Shukracharya, the preceptor of the Asuras, had thrown a challenge to the Devas to compete with them in dance competition. Indra selected Sumati for receiving instruction in an abridged form from Bharatarnava of Nandikeshwara. The work thereafter was called as Sumati Bodha. This gives us an idea of how curtailed version came into existence of a big manual for instant usage. Let us go to the next slide. A story from Bhavishya Purana. Bhavishya Purana mentions an interesting story of Lord Indra, who decided to conduct a dance competition between celestial nymphs Urvashi, Rambha, Tilotama and Menaka. The winner will be assigned the duty of enticing sage Vishwamitra and creating Vigna or obstacle in his penance. A tie took place between Urvashi and Rambha. Being unable to take a decision, Lord Indra called King Vikramaditya to judge the competition. King Vikramaditya had carried 2 flowers from the goddess's temple which had bees hidden in it. He handed over 1 flower to Rambha and 1 flower to Urvashi and asked them to dance with the flower in their hand. Rambha held the flower tightly. The bee stung her and she stopped dancing. On the other hand, Urvashi danced so effortlessly with the flower that even the bee in it didn't realize. Urvashi won the competition. Lord Indra was pleased with Vikramaditya's judgment and blessed him and gave him the vara or the boon that he will rule for next 1,000 years. In appreciation, Indra gifted him a throne which he had received from Lord Shiva. It had 32 statues engraved on it. You must have heard Simhasan Battisi. Now, let us go to the next legend. The first and the best mythical example available for dance competition seems to be the dance contest between Shiva and Kali, in which the right to command popular worship was decided by the efficiency at dance. Shiva defeated Kali by lifting his leg up in Urdhva Tandava pose during the contest. It is said that though Kali was capable of imitating the pose, she chose not to follow him, as it violated her feminine modesty, and she did not want to transgress its norms. She was thereby exiled to the outskirts of the town, and the temple was dedicated to Shiva's worship. This Tamil myth related to Chidambaram and the Tiruvalangadu temple is recorded in the temple texts called the Sthala Purana, datable to the 14th and 15th century of Common Era, and was written to eulogize the sacred significance of the temples. Let's see the next slide. You can see the right leg has been raised over here, and this is the same figure from back. Now, several research works of dance maestros and researchers like Dr. Padma Subramaniam, Dr. Archana Verma, Craddock, Ellen, Kavita Jayakrishnan have taken place on the Urdhva Tandava myth, and on the basis of literary texts and sculptural evidences, it has been found that this myth is a later addition during the rule of the Chola dynasty. Let us look at some evidences for the same. According to the legend in Shiva Pradosha Stotra, Shiva danced for the pleasure of his consort Parvati or Uma, and all the gods accompanied him. This is called Sandhya Nritya, or the evening dance of Shiva. In this slide, you can see one of the finest of the images that comes from Rahula Fadi cave at Aihole in Karnataka, where Shiva is dancing in his 8-armed form along with Ganesha. Here you can see the 8 hands, and here is Lord Ganesha, and Saptamatrikas etc. are also there. Parvati watches him from his left side over here. In the next slide, I will show you a more fine carved image of this form is found nearby outside the Badami cave 1, where Shiva is 16-armed and Ganesha and other figures are accompanying him in dance. You can see here Nandi over here. Now, these images were greatly popular in pre-Chola period, that is in 7th and 9th century of Common Era in both Deccan and South India. Let's go to the next slide. I will show you 2 Karnas which are considered as Urdhva Tandava. These are the 2 poses that are often referred to as Urdhva Tandava pose. The Natya Shastra by Bharata refers to this pose as Lalata Tilakam. Number 50 is Lalata Tilakam. The pose marking the forehead with the auspicious mark called Tilaka. It is the 50th Karna out of a total of 108 Karnas. And the second image is Nishumbhita, the 64th Karna. This is number 50, Lalata Tilaka. You can see the right leg has been raised. And look at the hands. The hands differ in Lalata Tilaka and Nishumbhita. Nishumbhita, the 64th Karna. It has been mistaken and called by the scholars as Urdhva Tandava or the Tandava dance with lifted leg. Since Bharat Muni gives a complete description of this pose, the term Urdhva seems to be a coinage of recent origin and therefore a misnomer for the images datable to the 8th and 12th century Common Era. Let's see the next slide. These are the 2 figures from Chidambaram and Kanchipuram. Lalata Tilaka images show Shiva lifting the right leg up straight parallel to his torso, and one of his left arm goes up and the hand touches the crown. One of the right arm of Shiva winds his lifted leg and makes the Abhaya gesture. Some of the earliest of these images are found in Kanchipuram, while some of the later figures of this dance form are from Chidambaram, Velur Shiva temple in Arcot district in Ribhavanam. If you notice, in all the above images, Shiva is depicted alone and not with Kali, as described in the Tamil popular myth. Let's go to the next slide. I'll show you some sculptures of Chidambaram temple, sculptural panels depicting female dancers. Besides these references, there is a profusion of sculptural panels which depict female dancers lifting their legs and touching their head with one foot, exactly as Shiva's image. Maximum number of these panels are seen in Chidambaram itself. You can see the right side, Karna 50 Lalata Tilaka, on the left from the East Gopuram in Chidambaram. On the right is from Tiruvadigal Granite, Nataraja temple of Chidambaram. From these panels, it is obvious that at least till the creation of Chidambaram temple gateways, there was no sense of immodesty associated with a woman lifting her leg, as the female dancers lifting their leg are depicted on the Chidambaram gateway. Now let us go to the Tamil literary evidences. A study of the Tamil texts of the 6th to 12th century Common Era also reveals that while other legends related to Shiva's exploits are described in these texts, the legend of the contest occurs nowhere in the texts. This is secular, or also called as Shakir, is the composer of Periya Puranam of 12th century Common Era. In his work, Shakir describes Shiva's dance being watched by Karaikalammaiyar. This is Karaikalammaiyar. She was one of the 3 women amongst the 63 Nayanmars and is one of the greatest figures of early Tamil literature. A study of her poems, however, shows that she has written specially on Shiva's various acts in her work called Adbhuta Tiruvantati, who describes the dance in these words. Tiruvananthakata is the place where our father, with his matted locks swinging in all the 8 directions, dances the fire dance to the delight of his limbs in the fiery cremation ground. There is no reference to the contest here, nor is the presence of Kali as a rival mentioned over here. In this pic you can see her actual name was Punitavati. She is called as Karaikalammaiyar because Shiva had asked her to come and visit her on her hands. Instead of making use of the legs, she is supposed to walk on her hands and come and watch the performance of Lord Shiva's dance. Later on, she got the name Karaikal Ammayar. Let's go to the next slide. Here you can see the Nataraja. Though in this specially Nataraja has not raised his leg up. Here is the goddesses Parvati. The next slide you can see, which is a close-up of this one. Here you can see Karaikal Ammayar in her demonic form. Let's go to the next slide. Linga Purana. Linga Purana mentions that after Dwarika was killed by Kali, to her delight, Shiva danced at dusk along with the ghosts, and after enjoying the dance of Shiva very much, the goddess Kali danced in the midst of the ghosts happily with her yoginis. Thus, Kali, a malevolent deity who really lies beyond the realm of the ordered society, living with the spirits in the cremation ground, feeding on flesh and blood and walking naked, wearing a garland of skulls, did not assume the Lalata Tilaka pose is difficult to accept, because she embodied the woman beyond the circumstantive norms of the society. She is not the subdued one like goddess Parvati, the consort of Lord Shiva, who is depicted as passive and living within the norms of the society. Some interesting observations emerge if we compare the above discussion with Sankhya philosophy. Purusha or Shiva is the passive principle in this philosophy, and Prakriti, that is Shakti, is the dynamic principle. This conceptualization is exactly reversed in the dance contest myth. The Tamil popular myth, however, changes the equation and uses the motive of contest to show the hierarchy of two deities, inverting the powerful image of Kali and compelling her to acquire a subdued and defeated image. It can be interpreted as the manipulation of a simple dance myth into a dance contest for showing the supremacy of patriarchy over matriarchy. However, the question still persists. Does the competitive spirit enrich dance? I would say yes, from a different angle, because this myth is supposed to have spread during the Chola period and their Ishta Devata was Lord Shiva. So also their contribution towards the art like dance and music was tremendous. Next point, I would say, this story gave forth a beautiful theme to writers, sculptors, and musicians. Shaiva saints have come up with songs related to this theme. This myth became the content of several later works related to dance. As an example, let us see this one. This is a composition by Muthu Tandavar, set to Ragam Mayamalava Gaula and Talam Adi. The language is Tamil. Here in the second charanam, you can see the last line which says Nindrada Karana Kali Yedirthu Nindrada Kanakasabhai Tannile. That means the dark, fearsome and powerful Kali stands and dances in front of him. Here it is not clear whether she is contesting with Lord Shiva or she is dancing with him in joy. like the example which was given in the Dharika. Now, next one is the work of Shahaji Bhosle. Shahaji, being a great devotee of Tyagesha, the lord of dance, wrote an opera named Tyagesha Vinoda Chitra Prabandha. Significant enough, the work is also called as Shankara Kali Natana Vada Mahanataka. This work is filled with plenty of music and dance scores. Now let us see the traces of this myth in the traditional folk form of Maharashtra, that is in Tamasha, Kalgi Tura. Kalgi Tura Shahiri, a kind of metaphysical and spiritual poetry which talks about the dichotomy of two forces, Shiva and Shakti, presented as a performing art. In particular, has metaphysical elements which emerge clearly in the Tamasha. Folk poets in Maharashtra are either from the Shiva devotees, Kalgi group, or from the Shakti devotees, Tura group. The competition between them is not restricted to singing and presentation alone. It is also a competition of philosophies and values, discourses from the ancient scriptures like Puranas, Kalgi Tura poetry, the luminous poetry of the Povada, folk art form in which the bards sing praise, and its presentation, and the singing that bursts forth in conjunction with the dance drama of the Lavani. You can see different forms of this Kalgi Tura. It has evolved slowly and it has evolved to Jugalbandi in Lavani. All these facets go to show how varied the Tamasha is, and Tamasha entertains young and old alike. It is due to all these factors that Maharashtrians point to the Tamasha with pride as their own art form with a long and illustrious tradition. We have one more version in Karnataka of Kalgi Tura. It is in the form of a musical ballet tradition prevalent in North Karnataka. These were in vogue in South Karnataka also, and they have now become extinct. There will be many more art forms like this, but I have chosen a few due to the limitation of time. So, taking all the above points into consideration, I would like to conclude by saying that competition can bring out the best and the worst in people. Competition can also teach great sportsmanship and a team camaraderie, but it is something that we choose to build through our performance instead of competitions. Training young artists to only associate winning with success strips them of the notion that they are creating an art. So I prefer dance festivals where the upcoming artists are given a chance to perform for a longer duration and to do justice with the art. While planning for Nalanda Nrityotsav, I remember words of our Guru, Kanak ma'am, that it is the duty of a pioneer to nurture the art form by providing the dice to the upcoming artist and to encourage the young generation. Overall, I would say, offer students a well-rounded dance education and teach them to embrace art for all that it is. They should love performing for entertainment, creativity, and in-depth understanding of technique and artistry, all without competition. Thank you.